even though the Sustainable Travel Summit doesn't technically start until tomorrow morning on Thursday. We wanted to start it off with a little pre-session with a special interview with Peggy Vale. This session is called The Trail Well Traveled, an interview with the director of Gringo Trails. Gringo Trails is a groundbreaking documentary that chronicles how tourism has changed various parts of the planet over the last 20 years. You can rent or buy this documentary at Andana Films if you are outside of the United States or North America. If you're inside North America, you can rent it at Icarus Films, iTunes, Amazon, or Google Play. Check out our website and the summit schedule for the links.
All of us alive now are sitting on this opportunity that was unimaginable to our grandparents. Suddenly, the world is open to us as it's never been to humanity before.
The four of us leave civilization and penetrate the real uncharted Amazon.
It's been a magical day.
I'm like Indiana Jones. Look at the alligator.
This is one of those things that I'm going to bring people back to and show them.
It was something out of a dream. We always dreamed of sleeping in the middle of the desert under the stars.
Today's travelers are just crisscrossing the world at greater volume and intensity than ever before. The map of our planet now looks like a Jackson Pollock canvas.
From backpacking to backpackaging.
This incredible beach, unspoiled, that nobody knew about. But I asked, whatever you do, don't tell people.
We all come to party. Full moon party.
It's the beach that I had been at with thousands and thousands of people. It was staggering.
After 3-4 days, you start really seeing the complete lack of respect.
And you have to keep that in mind when you travel.
Tourism should have never been allowed to take place the way it did. It was anarchy. Where's all the plastic gonna go? Where's the waste gonna go? Where are people gonna go to the bathroom? What is our environmental footprint? What is our impact on the very cultures that we're visiting?
Peggy Vale has a doctorate in anthropology and is a filmmaker at New York University's Center for Media, Culture, and History. She teaches documentary film production in NYU's program in Culture and Media. Her documentary Gringo Trails looks at the long-term cultural and environmental effects of global tourism. Today we're going to talk about the making of the film and how her career in ecotourism has evolved since then. Remember, you can ask her questions in the chat window, or you can tweet your questions at us at ITM Summit 17.
All right. Peggy, it is so wonderful that we were able to schedule this interview and learn a little bit more about your documentary, Gringo Trails. And thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's great. This is great. I totally believe in your summit. It's such a wonderful idea to do an online summit. I think it's great.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited about it. And it's all coming together so wonderfully so far. And I see this beautiful backyard behind you. Could you tell me a little bit more about where you are and some fun things that are happening?
It's a nice tree. I actually just put a swing up on that tree, but it's a little high for kids. I'm actually at my brother's place in Stockholm, Sweden, in Enskede, which is a neighborhood that is like 10 minutes away from the city center. I think it's about 10 minutes away. And so that's where his family lives, and I'm just visiting in first day of vacation, actually.
Nice. I'm sure you don't get a whole lot of vacation. Yeah, lots of fun things happening.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. I would like to kind of talk about the process of making Gringo Trails. It took 13 years, if I remember correctly, of collecting footage and kind of seeing what tourism was doing to some of these communities. Could you tell us a little bit more about what inspired you to actually create the film and the process of making it?
Yeah. So basically, when I started out making the film, it's really my ode to travel in a way. I was a backpacker myself for a long time in my 20s and early 30s, and I felt like I knew the subculture. And when I went back to school for anthropology and ultimately decided to do an ethnography on backpackers and their storytelling, I thought, well, I wanted to make a film about that as well. And so actually when I started out the film, it was more like an ethnography of travelers, of backpackers around the world and how it's a similar trail no matter where you go. And I started filming in Mali, Thailand, and Bolivia. And I chose those locations because, Mali's kind of in the beginning of the process of tourism development, and Bolivia's somewhere in the middle, and then Thailand, of course, has been traveled to for a long time. And I had personally been to Thailand as a backpacker on Koh Phangan in the mid-'80s. So I felt like, Bolivia is where I did my dissertation research for anthropology. So and Mali I'd never been to. So it was kind of, those were the choices. We started filming in 1999. And by the time I returned to the film, I actually put the film aside for the time when I was doing my dissertation, my research. And when I returned to it, I had already thought about some different things that were happening based on the research. But revisiting the same locations we filmed in 99 initially, it became a different film. I mean, clearly, like in just that time period, by the time we resumed in 2009, 2010, it had, we'd become kind of more at a tipping point, and I saw the more important story to tell at that point was to really focus more on where we're at and to use the tool, like the visual tool of the film, to show how the process works, and as both a cautionary tale and solution-based.
Interesting. And I know in a previous screening that I was able to take part in a couple years ago, you had mentioned at that time that the goal of the film was to open the conversation about the effect that tourism is having on these communities. Do you feel that this film has accomplished that goal?
I feel like it definitely contributed to it. I really do, because I think some of it, it opened up the conversation. I think it contributed to looking at what some of the challenges are of rapid tourism growth. Frankly, we didn't have the hindsight years and years ago to know kind of where it was headed and to understand like what needed to be, the planning ahead that might be involved. And I think that's the biggest. I think that's a contribution, was to say, look, you can use this film as a visual to see what we need to talk about, how we can plan ahead, what all of us can do on all parts of the tourism spectrum, from the traveler to the local person involved to the industry to the government. What can we do? So I feel like it did open up that based on what I saw, and it really traveled a lot itself, the film, through the travel press and general publications like CNN and plenty of other publications that focused on the film to use it as a way to talk about these issues. So I think it opened up, it provided a catalyst to talk about some of the challenges that tourism development is where we're at, kind of what we're facing with that.
Yeah, wonderful, great.
Yeah, and the film's been out. I mean, the other thing is the film's been out for 3.5 years, so it's still traveling around. So I feel like it's still providing that for a lot of folks to be able to have something they can use to talk about these issues. And there's other films now that are doing that too. But I feel like we contributed. So I feel good about the goal that we had set.
Yeah, absolutely, wonderful. I'm wondering if the film itself has inspired new projects for you or for others to continue that conversation and to continue that kind of work.
Well, I definitely feel like from opening a conversation to kind of thinking more about what next projects are, but I feel that, because the travel world online is still trying to grapple with some of these things. I feel like it's still kind of inspiring that conversation. But at this point, there are plenty of people that are addressing it, and more films are coming out. Since the time we filmed, came out, like I said, about 3.5 years ago. There are other films that are addressing the urban context even in tourism and what's happening, whether it's Barcelona or Berlin or Venice. So I think it, I don't know if it inspired that, but it's definitely, it could be the times, like the times we're in, and people realizing, oh my gosh, let's look at all these places and these concerns.
Absolutely.
But we did for instance, I participated like a year ago, maybe it was 2 years ago, in a Skift podcast that was with myself and the CEO of New York City and Company. So in my own city of New York, we were talking about what some of the challenges are in Times Square. So it's not just, I think it's not even just in the rural context. I think now things are being addressed in the urban environment as well. But I think in general, the people that have the biggest challenges are oftentimes in very rural or low-income communities where the stakes are a lot higher. I think that's some of the differences. We can make some of these changes and where we have more resources, but it's a little bit tougher.
Yeah, absolutely.
For those countries that don't.
Yes, and I've talked with several travelers. I've seen it myself where, we've gone one place, maybe several years ago, and it was beautiful, pristine. The people were very welcoming, and you just felt like you had a special experience there. And then you go back a few years later, and suddenly everyone's found it, and they maybe haven't tread as lightly as you would like them to. And all of a sudden, the locals are more focused on trying to get as much profit as they can, even though they're not getting the true amount of wealth that is being spread. And so I think a lot of people are seeing this on their own time scales, but then through Gringo Trails, you can really see the degradation that is being done in some of these locations. So yeah.
Well, that was definitely the hope to show. I mean, having been in Copenhagen myself, and then all the way to the present, seeing those changes really was hopeful to show it, how it, like, where along the way, like, what are some of the loopholes? What are some of the places along the way that could have been different, like the development that happened there. So hopefully, yeah, like using those visuals to actually do them maybe in tourism training, or, place yourselves in different positions, like if you were the local, if you were the traveler, if you were the government person, the local municipality, what would you do differently in any of these time periods or given this certain situation in a particular year?
Exactly. Wonderful. And hopefully others can learn and not make some of those same mistakes and continue the sustainable path. And so I'm interested, you've seen so many of these changes over the years. Have you seen further changes in the last 3.5 years in some of these locations? Have you seen, which direction have you seen some of these changes?
I think that because now people are more aware, even in just the last few years, I think people are a lot more aware, including travelers. But, in terms of like kind of unraveling, or rather like detwining, or what, how would you say, the profit-based model from the people and environment, I think it's hard to do that, because I think that's in some ways more for the traveler, because the local person or the person working in the industry wants to make a profit. Right. So I don't know if we can completely detangle those things, but I do think that we can make it more of a win-win situation if you're doing best tourism practices, and then everybody also benefits on either side. So I think those, and I think more people are doing that. There are more local people getting involved to talk to people that are doing tourism, about what might happen in their communities. I think that's changed. There are a lot more consultants that are out there that are from communities themselves, or nearby communities that might have experienced tourism. So that's a change too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. And speaking to that change, the sustainable tourism, I started Immersion Travel Magazine, the idea of it about 5 years ago. And I looked online, and there really weren't that many resources apart from, the Eco-Tourism Travel Association and GSTC, and there's some bigger organizations. But now when you look it up, there's hundreds. So
well, that shows you the changes,
Absolutely. It's very exciting. In the sustainable travel world, so many of us are really hoping to someday not have to be able to use the term sustainable or responsible or green or eco. We just want it to be travel. Travel in general is, includes this better mindset. Do you think that, with everything that you've seen, do you think that is a realistic goal that could be accomplished at some point?
I do. I think it is realistic. In fact, I think we need to make it happen. I think of the word, some of these terms as like sustainability. I think of it as a transition word, much in the same way tolerance was, and used as kind of like, well, you're just going to tolerate somebody, or you're just going to sustain something. I feel in some ways they're this middle ground that were used to address a problem, obviously. You know, just even those two terms, and it used to address some kind of issue that we're having in society that we need to grapple with, and I think and deal with. So I think that did the trick for getting people to at least start thinking about these things. But I think we need to then do more forward action oriented kinds of movement versus just maintaining something. And I think that's what sustainability, in some ways, it's like maintaining it, so it's just that at least.
Yes.
So then what can we do for the future? So I think that, and I've been thinking a lot about, the way we talk about, like the way in environmental movements and activism and culturally based activism, like instead of that, I think is where we could disentangle that separation that happens oftentimes in those activist movements. And I think like we could make tourism activism something, and I think that's not something people have thought about in terms of activist movements. And so maybe we could, get activist movements that are tourism based, that bring together people and environment, because it's all the same. I mean, it's all affecting the entire whole. So yeah, maybe a tourist activist movement is next.
Could be in the cards. Yeah, so you were kind of talking about maybe ways to untwist or untangle the profit-mindedness of a lot of tourism. And like you said, I mean, so many people need that profit. They need that so that they can put food on the table and live a successful life in their eyes.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that maybe there are ways that we can still have this profit be a part of the equation, but also have it help conserve environments and promote cultural stability. Have you seen examples of this that you could provide an example for and kind of illustrate what that looks like?
Right. Well, again, I don't think we can fully take the profit, because that's what makes it an industry. But I do think, I think we use even in our film the example of like Chalalan Eco Lodge, and where it's, a community, in this case, a Quechua Tacana indigenous community in Bolivia, that they needed to get funding to get their project started, because they had been working, some of the members of their community, in other tourism initiatives that weren't their own. And they weren't having control over their own environment and their own community. And I think the more people that get involved in their own homes in a way that's then helping preserve not only culturally, but also preserve the area around where people are living, I think getting everybody at the table in the conversation. So it's, so everybody can be involved in some of the planning ahead. And that's part of the responsibility of travelers too, I think, is just like which locations they're choosing and so forth.
Excellent. Do you have plans to make another film or make a continuation, or what kind of projects do you have in mind?
Well, any funders out there, just kidding. It costs a lot of money to make a film. We actually do. We have a couple of films that are kind of some in the planning, some that are going to be start filming. But like one film, I can't really talk about it, just because we're awaiting permissions from a country, the host country, and we think it's a really important issue. But until we get full permission to film where we want to film, can't talk about it. But I'm actually writing a memoir, travel-related memoir.
Oh, nice.
While we're also planning these films, and that'll bring in a lot of the things that came about through both my dissertation and a lot of the stuff from Gringo Trails, and it should be also a fun read, hopefully.
Oh, sounds like it. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, please look to the future. We'll be announcing the filming soon, like we would possibly do a Kickstarter or something, but just awaiting that word on whether we can film or not.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll stay in touch and let everybody know for sure. What happens.
Oh, one last thing is that I think we're at some point. I think some of the places that we filmed in 1999 that weren't included in Gringo Trails, like Laos. We filmed in Laos in Laos and in like Van Vieng and places that also experienced, as you know, probably, a kind of like the route that Koh Phangan had taken at one point. But the community kind of got together on some level and made changes there. And so we might be able to, we're thinking of using some of that old footage from then to also show changes, but be a little bit more solution-based and see what communities are doing themselves that have either altered the paths of what some of these places where they've gone. So we filmed in Burkina Faso, we filmed in Laos, and that could be, in the future we might use that whether it's on a website or in a film.
That's great. Very, very exciting. Nice. So those are some of my questions, but if there's anything else that you would like to share with viewers about the film or any takeaways for those that maybe have not watched the film yet and are interested in doing so, what are some maybe things to keep in mind while they're watching? Some takeaways.
Yeah, I think what's been interesting is that oftentimes viewers will look at the Thailand section, which is our cautionary tale, like in Koh Phangan. But the focus, because it's so dramatic, some of the images are so dramatic, and the changes there are so dramatic, that sometimes we just thinking more about some of the solutions offered too, and not just the how tourism can go wrong, but also where is it going right or how's it going right, and the role of storytelling. We can all tell different stories. That's why we made that a real focus of the film. Is the role of storytelling is, I think, really important. Whether it's what are the stories we're writing about places online, how we're writing about them, whose story is it? Is the local person's story about their place? Are we getting the same? Is it getting the same traction in travel, in the travel world, and travel press? So, how do we change our stories?
Yeah, wonderful. All very important things to consider. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Peggy, for taking the time out and sharing this beautiful landscape. This beautiful
There's
backyard.
that tree. I got to fix that swing. That's about it.
Awesome.
All right.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. It's great talking to you, and I can't wait to see get involved in the summit. Oh, one last
Yes,
thing.
yes.
We're actually screening during the summit time. We're screening on Inishbofin Island for the Inish Fest Island Conversations on June 3rd, Saturday, and it's the island where my grandmother is from, and they became the first island to win the International Ecotourism Award from the Global Travel Sustainable Council. So we're pretty excited. I'm pretty excited about that screening because it's close to home.
Yes, very exciting. And anyone in the area, would they be welcome to come and watch? Great.
Yep. It's a beautiful island north of the Aran Islands. It's a ferry ride from Cleggan in Galway County.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
And another reminder for anyone watching who would like to watch Gringo Trails, it is available to rent, and we have several links available where you can go and find Gringo Trails, and you can even buy it and watch it whenever you would like.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again, and enjoy that screening coming up.
Okay. All right. See you later. Bye, Claire. Bye, Travel Summit. Bye.